Gangsta Gang, it's your boy DuceTheReaper back at it again with another banger, man. Today we got another motherfucking murder mystery. You feel me? Part 2 type shit.
Part motherfucking 2.
Y'all fucked with the last one. That's why we posting this one right now. Clearly. Matter of fact, can I hit that rate?
Say what?
Hit that.
Oh, yeah.
Appreciate it. Let's get right up into this part 2. I really don't even feel like talking right now. Some shit just happened, so you're into this shit.
Murfreesboro, Tennessee is a place in the United States that saw a very famous battle take place during the Civil War, the Battle of Stones River. In recent years, Murfreesboro has enjoyed substantial growth, with many people flocking there thanks to the university. In 1984, a crime took place involving a university student that's still talked about today in Murfreesboro. On May 31st of 1984, a farmer in Murfreesboro, Tennessee made a startling discovery on his way home. The farmer saw some clothing lying in the field and decided to approach. When he did, he noticed the body of a girl was under the clothing. She was only wearing a bra and was covered with 2 pairs of jeans and a dark jacket. The sleeve of the jacket was wrapped around her neck. Investigators determined the first pair of jeans were hers and the second pair were men's jeans. There were also a pair of underwear found clutched in one of her hands. She was identified as 18-year-old Laura Salmon. Laura was born on October 6, 1965 in Tennessee. At the time, Laura was a local college student. She attended Middle Tennessee State University in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and furthermore, she also worked as a cashier at Kroger grocery store. The autopsy concluded that Laura lost her life due to blunt force trauma to the head. The weapon appeared to be the rocks found near her body. The blood on those rocks and other material were consistent with her being struck up to 10 times in the head.
With a rock?
Also, during the autopsy, the medical examiner found that Laura had been intimate with someone within the last 24 hours or 48 hours prior to her life being taken.
These is females,
There were no injuries or any evidence found that showed it was not consensual. Naturally, one of the biggest leads for investigators was the pair of men's jeans found on top of Laura's body. Investigators found male DNA on the jeans from a different individual than the male that was intimate with Laura. This DNA likely belonged to the perpetrator. Unfortunately, DNA testing was still in its infancy, and there was not much else investigators could do with the DNA other than store it. Investigators then focused on creating a timeline of events, hoping that it would help them solve the case. Laura started her day by going to her job at the Kroger grocery.
Ain't that crazy? They save every fucking thing, even when they can't even do nothing with it.
Oh God, because they know they might find
Figure
some
out
shit
something.
later. Me.
Figure out something.
Man.
And you feel me, like the last one. All it takes is just one fuck up. One fuck up, and we gonna know who you is. One fuck up.
We already got some evidence.
Man, that's the crazy part. That's hella crazy. They save every fucking thing, down to your socks. Man, down to your what's that shit called? Your fingerprints, your toenail prints. Yeah. Shit crazy.
Yeah, shoulder, knees, and toes.
Store. The records showed that she left the store around 1 p.m. After that, she was supposed to go to an appointment at the Middle Tennessee State University to check her grades and meet with some of the office personnel.
She was trying to get her life right.
She also had plans to go swimming at her grandmother's house, but never made it there or the university. Investigators found Laura's car near the store, miles away from where her body was found. Investigators were unable to find any fingerprints in the car that did not belong to Laura. But, interestingly, they did find a foreign hair, It was stored alongside the DNA evidence they collected from the pair of jeans. Equally important, investigators found dirt in the wheel wells. The FBI lab determined that they were consistent and that there was a high probability that Laura's car had been on the road right next to the crime scene. This meant that someone took Laura's life and then drove her car back to her place of work. Other than making the investigators believe the perpetrator knew Laura, the lead was not fruitful. Witnesses came forward and placed Laura at a local nightclub on the night before her life was taken. The witnesses said Laura was dancing with an unidentified young man, but investigators could not locate him. Laura's body was found in an area that often served as a lover's lane for high school and college students. They went there to party, have bonfires, etc. The theory then became that Laura met a guy at the nightclub after she finished work and they went to Lover's Lane. There, Laura denied the unknown guy's advances and he took
Okay. She denied that.
her life. Since investigators could not identify the young man, they talked to Laura's high school boyfriend, David Kyle Gilly. He was known to be the jealous type, but he had an alibi. His stepfather told the police that David was home all day when Laura's life was taken, so he could not be responsible. Thus, he was ruled out as a suspect. Just when investigators ran out of leads to follow, a woman in Nashville, Tennessee called the police with a possible lead.
No, why your girl taking motherfuckers with her after a party, club, whatever?
That's crazy. That's
What?
crazy.
Ain't no way. Drunk as fuck, you dancing with a motherfucker, first of all, at a club or a party or a concert,
Whatever, nigga.
Yeah. And then second, you taking the motherfucker back? Ain't no way you ain't giving no sucky or a bucky. That's crazy.
Oh,
Boy, you're wild. You crazy if you think that. And then Brody, her nigga got mad.
you know he got mad.
Oh my God, he known for a jealous type. Yeah, he got mad. Went, smoked though, and then watch. Yeah, watch.
She claimed that she had been assaulted by a man named John Taylor. During the ordeal, Taylor apparently told her that he would do the same thing to her that he did to Laura. When questioned by the police, Taylor denied assaulting the woman and denied talking about Laura or having anything to do with her. A background check discovered that Taylor attended the same university as Laura. He was even a member of the same health club, Olympus Athletic Club and Spa. Taylor also attended the same fraternity, gatherings, and functions as Laura. Even more relevant, Taylor was near the university on the day that Laura's life was taken. Taylor had a history of being violent towards his girlfriends or his female companions. All this added to his possibility of being a suspect. Investigators then had FBI analysts compare Taylor's hair to the foreign hair they found inside of Laura's car. They received a report back from the FBI that the hair recovered from the vehicle was consistent with John Taylor's hair. Case closed, right? Another asshat caught. But not quite. At the time, mitochondrial DNA testing of human hair was still quite a few years away. The hair could have belonged to about 20% of the population. This was, of course, not concrete enough to arrest Taylor. Even though it seemed like a done deal, there would be a few more twists in this case. Investigators found nothing to link him to the crime scene or to confirm that he was with Laura on that day. The men's pair of jeans found at the crime scene had an inseam of 36 inches and the waist was 30 inches. Taylor was a small fellow and the jeans would not have fit him. Investigators had no choice but to move on to other suspects. Over the years, they looked into over 100 suspects, but nothing came of it. Laura's mother, Lorene Mackey, made a promise to Laura at her grave. She promised Laura that she would see that justice was done. Lorene didn't really know how she would fulfill that promise, but she decided it was the last thing she could do for Laura. Many long years would pass before help finally came. Dan Goodwin was one of Laura's friends at the university. He went out with her a few nights before her life was ended. Dan asked her if she wanted to go see a movie, and they wound up at the cinema on May 27th, 1984, where they saw a matinee show of The Natural with Robert Redford. At Laura's funeral, Dan promised her mother that he would help find the perpetrator. After graduation, Dan became a newspaper reporter at the Daily News Journal in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. There, he became the police reporter. He wrote about a series of unsolved cases in 1987, which included Laura's case. Dan knew that he was more interested in the actual police work than simply just writing about it. Several years later, Dan left journalism and became a police officer. The very first cold case he was assigned was Laura Salmon's. One of the first things Dan did was send all of the evidence back to the forensic lab for testing. DNA technology had greatly advanced, and completely new testing took place. While that was ongoing, Dan followed other leads, one of which came from a high school student. In 2000, a student at Oakland High School was talking about the Laura Salmon case. The student told everyone that his father took the life of a girl in 1984 and thrown her body away. The student's father was David Patterson. He had a police record for aggravated assault. Unfortunately, when Dan wanted to try to speak to Patterson, he learned that Patterson was not alive anymore. He had been fatally shot. Dan, of course, still decided to continue following the lead. They obtained DNA from Patterson's children. The DNA was compared to the male DNA found at the crime scene. It was not a match, and he was ruled out as a suspect. Dan then went back to John Taylor, who was initially a suspect in the case. His DNA also did not match. In case you were wondering, Dan also provided a DNA sample. After it was tested, it confirmed that Dan was not responsible. Dan then turned his attention to one man who went under the radar in the initial investigation. The name that caught his eye was David Gilley. As earlier mentioned, David was Laura's high school boyfriend, a year younger than her. He was initially ruled out because of the alibi he was given by his stepfather. Dan, however, found that a witness came forward that directly contradicted that alibi. The witness saw David Gilley driving Laura's car on the day that her body was found. She spotted him not far from the road that led to the area where Laura was found. According to the witness, David had a blank expression on his face and was just staring straight ahead. She was able to identify him through a photo lineup as well as Laura's car. Dan also saw David's propensity of violence towards women in his life.
You know it was that nigga with
This
a rock,
included
though.
Laura Salmon.
That's some Michael Myers
Sometimes
shit.
he would get mad at her, grab her by the head, banging her head into cars, school lockers, or whatever was nearby.
Oh yeah, you know it was that
He even
nigga.
sometimes
Whatever was
punched
nearby,
her.
rocks.
On one occasion, he broke out 2 of her front teeth. Dan could not
God
believe
damn.
David Gilley was so quickly ruled out during the initial investigation. David was approximately 6 foot 2 inches tall, and the men's jeans that were found at the crime scene would have fit him perfectly. Dan then got Jerry Findley's help on the case. He is a crime scene reconstructionist. Jerry found tiny drops of blood in the jeans. It was medium velocity impact spatter. This sort of spatter usually gets produced when someone is hit with a blunt object such as a rock. The majority of the blood stains were just above the knee. This indicated that the perpetrator was kneeling on the ground as he was hitting Laura with the rocks. All of this evidence just confirmed to investigators that the men's pair of jeans belonged to the person who took Laura's life. It was already believed, but DNA testing confirmed that the blood on the jeans belonged to Laura. Dan then tracked David Gilley down in Florida. By then, Gilley was twice divorced and he was working for the Manatee County Public Works Department. Unsurprisingly, he had a police record. Gilley had arrests for battery, attempted burglary, and resisting arrest.
Damn. After catching a
When
body,
Dan
he
questioned
still went to
Gilley,
jail?
he once again denied any involvement and said that he is not responsible for what happened to Laura. In a strange twist, Gilley did admit that the jeans were probably his. When investigators told him that they believed the owner of the jeans is the perpetrator, he quickly requested an attorney. Investigators then obtained a saliva sample from David Gilley. On May 31st of 2000, DNA testing proved that Gilley was the donor of the DNA found at the crime scene and thus responsible for taking Laura's life. On the 16th anniversary of the crime, David Gilley was finally arrested. Dan the man kept his promise to help Laura's mother in solving the case, and Laura's mother kept her promise to Laura that she would see justice take place. The motive was believed to be jealousy. If Gilley could not have Laura, he believed no one else could either. When she went off to college and he was still in high school, she made new friends, and he didn't like that. He would often stalk her. Laura's mother tried to convince Laura to get a restraining order against Gilley, but she was too afraid. Investigators believe that Gilley somehow coaxed Laura out to the deserted lover's lane, where he struck her in the head repeatedly with rocks. After seeing that there was blood on his jeans, Gilley took them off and left them at the crime scene. He then drove Laura's car to her workplace, where it would later be found. In September of 2006, David Gilley went on trial. The defense claimed the presence of another man's DNA was proof that someone else was at the crime scene. The jury never believed any other DNA at the crime scene belonged to the real perpetrator. Gilley was found guilty of all the charges against...
Mail time, mail time, mail time, mail time, mail time, mail time,
Jail time, jail time,
jail time.
Oh my God.
Nigga.
him, and he was sentenced to life in prison.
3 + 4. Oh, that's the next one.
Narborough is an extremely safe village in Leicestershire, England. It is...
Yeah. Yeah.
That shit crazy.
Yeah, that shit's hella crazy. That was that shit though. Man. Y'all fuck with it, we gonna do another one. We're gonna do another one.
On me.
If you made this far, like, comment, share, and hit that sub button.
On me. Leave y'all. Let us know what y'all thought of that.
Exactly. Like, come on now. What you wanna know? We wanna know, man.
That shit was crazy.
Shit.
The jealous ex.
Jealous ass nigga, man.